Adventure time, come on, grab your friends.
Yeah,
go to very distant lands. Jake the dog and Finn the human, the fun will never end. It's adventure time.
Hello, this is the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Katrina Stanton.
I'm Steven Zuber, and with us as our guest,
Patrick Chapin.
And Patrick, the reason you're here is because you are the person I know who is most into Go and can explain the AlphaGo stuff to us. And you also know a lot about AlphaGo itself, but introduce yourself as what you do, what your area of expertise is, that sort of thing.
Okay, my name is Patrick Chapin. I'm a game designer, a professional card player, game player, I guess.
Which card game?
Primarily Magic the Gathering now. I used to be into a number of other ones, including poker, but largely Magic the Gathering.
Oh man, nerd alert.
Hey, no.
Absolutely.
The first time I met him, he said, I'm a card player. And right away, this was when the poker player thing was really big. All the poker players were winning and giving all their money to EA. Well, not all of them, obviously. But there were a number of big EA donations from poker players. And I was like, because, it was at a Les Wrong meetup. He's probably one of those guys that plays poker professionally, donates, 3/4 of the money to good Give Well.
Yeah, you would assume that.
I would, because he said card game. Like, people who play Magic say I play Magic, as far as I've noticed. And
sometimes it takes a little while to explain context.
Dude, you were in a group of nerds, dude. Everyone there knows Magic.
Dude, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like, it was
you say Magic, and they're like, oh, you gonna pull a rabbit out of your hat?
It was like an hour and a half later, and you were like, oh, wait, you played Magic professionally and you won? OMG! So it was kind of cool. Also, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh,
but
no.
Not card player, Magic player. Much more prestigious in this particular circle of listeners.
Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer, actually, and two-time loser in the finals of the World Championships.
Oh, wow. You made it further than most people do. Round of applause.
Oh, wow.
I can find the sound effects, too. We can do like a cheer.
Oh, thank you, Academy. But no, I also do video game stuff here in Denver, including a lot of work on AI for some of the video games we make.
Fantastic.
Any video games anyone might have heard of?
Yeah. Unfortunately,
you can't talk
Shadow Dev works.
Gotcha. Okay, so we will...
But we got some coming soon that we can talk about. Eternal, a online card game that I'm really excited about. But so sort of all over the place, but very passionate about AI and games.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
So, Patrick, we're just gonna throw you right into the fire. Do you want to explain the recent AlphaGo tournament and kind of give us a little bit of background there?
Before we begin, the thing that when you explained Go to me and why it was so difficult for computers to do, I was really like, I have almost no idea what Go is. I mean, I know like a few of the basic rules, but I've never played it. So tell me this whole thing about Go being probability distributions and not knowing how it's going to end until right near the end.
Yeah, so Go has long been sort of the final frontier of, at the very least, perfect information games. Go is relatively simple. You just, like, for instance, the way they play, there's a 19 by 19 board, and then there's just each side only has one kind of piece. And there's very few rules to it. It's actually very, very simple, but the complexity of the game is so just off the charts that for the majority of time that people have had computers, it's always just sort of been thought that it might be impossible to have computers be good at the game. The combination, like the number of different possible board states and games of Go that you can play on just a 19 by 19 grid is many hundreds of digits more than the number of different chess games you can meaningfully, or 40-move chess games you can meaningfully play. So it's far, far, far too complex to brute force. And the strategy, so to speak, the way of thinking about Go is something that is very, very difficult to put into words for, or at least commands for a computer. Go is often described as a very intuitive game, and you have to sort of just have a sense of what moves to make and how it might turn out, and you don't know the consequences necessarily of your actions. You're kind of giving yourself better chances, like you're creating like regions, areas where you have some chance of hopefully getting an advantage of some sort, and you have to be able to change what kind of an advantage you're going for. But it's very hard for computers.
How long was this a goal for AI scientists?
Well, 20 years ago, the popular wisdom was that it was impossible to make a Go program that could ever beat a master level, like a high level human. 10 years ago, people thought that hopefully by 2050 we would have technology that good. A year ago, I think people would have said that, hopefully within 10 years. But earlier this year was the first time that a Go program was able to actually defeat a high-level player. And from there, they set up a match against the 18-time titleist and world champion Lee Sedol, who has been kind of the most iconic Go player of the last few decades. And that's the AlphaGo match that recently got a whole lot of buzz. So I guess this has been the Holy Grail since longer than people thought it was necessarily possible, but it really caught the world by surprise to suddenly be here, or to have jumped this far ahead.
And you mentioned that there's various clouds of probability across the board as to what's going to happen, and you have to juggle those, that it's really hard for even a grandmaster to tell what the score is going to be, even as much as a few moves away from the end.
Yeah, so it spirals into so many complex trees of possibility, and it's so hard to know exactly how a region is going to turn out that, like, even the commentary for AlphaGo, one of the two commentators in the English stream is the best Western Go player in the world. And him trying to evaluate the position and figure out, is this even-ish? Is this slightly better for AlphaGo? Is this slightly better for Lee Sedol? And by, how much, or how likely is it that this battle will work out for Lee Sedol or AlphaGo? There's a lot of judgment. It's got a lot more, people have sort of a feeling.
Who are the creators of AlphaGo?
So AlphaGo is part of Alphabet, which is functionally Google. It's actually made by DeepMind, which is a company that Google acquired, like a company that's been doing AI research for a number of years that Google acquired a couple years ago. And one of the people in DeepMind pitched the idea of combining a few different types of AI systems, a few different types to play Go. And this is actually the 49th, I believe, game that this system, you could say AlphaGo has played, but they only call the one that plays Go AlphaGo. But this system that they've been developing, this is the 49th game that it has learned.
Wow.
It's a general learning algorithm. It's not actually, they didn't teach any Go strategy. That's part of the crazy thing is that, yeah, they actually didn't teach it. That's part of the thing that's so crazy about it is that it has developed its own strategy and did not get strategic advice from the humans.
I read that there are kind of 3 different processes, and you may be able to illuminate us on these, that they took towards teaching this program Go.
They gave it different tools. The strategy, so it's interesting, they trained it a number of ways. They gave it a bunch of information for improving its understanding, but the actual strategy that it chooses isn't actually, so I guess I'll walk through it a little. The first thing they did is they trained it to identify what humans would do in a given position. And they let it look at millions of games, basically just an enormous number of human games, tens of thousands of top-level games, and I'm not even sure how many other games, but they let it over and over and over again study, sort of using the sort of technology that allows facial recognition software to learn when a picture has a cat in it or not.
I heard that called a neural network.
Yes. Yeah, it has a neural network that is... A neural network is like a series of computing systems that are hooked up sort of like brain cells. And the neural network can be trained and can learn how to do things better and think about things better without you just directing it, without you just saying, this is how you should think about it. You know, like a traditional computing system, you just write out what the logic is. A neural network can be used to learn about something in a way that is, like you give it guidelines, but you don't know the way that it's going to end up thinking about it. And in this case, it learns to predict what a human would do by trying various strategies. Like there's lots of variations of AlphaGo that are slight mutants of each other that some of them would predict slightly more this way, some would predict slightly more that way, and have lots and lots of different combinations of ways they would interpret something. And then they over time, it's like it's like a learning algorithm that gets better and better and better. And they reproduce, like the ones that successfully guess, like the brain cells that successfully guess what a human would do are rewarded and get to reproduce more. And over time, AlphaGo became substantially better at guessing what humans would do than any other program has ever been, just from the amount that they have given it to work with.
Now, you mentioned something about there's 2 neural networks that work together.
So there's actually there's 2 main AI systems that it uses. One is the neural network that evaluates a board, where it'll look at the game, the state of affairs right now, and predict what the human would do. But there's a different part of it that predicts like the probability of winning based on like what it's learned about games. But that whole system that just evaluates board positions is only one of the 2 AIs, and they're actually different AI systems that continually message back and forth with each other over and over and over again. The other one is the policy. It sets the policy, like what moves the computer will make, and it will suggest a variety of moves. You know, like one of the baseline is sort of whatever the human would do is sort of believed to be the starting point. Like if a human would do this half the time, then you should, and that's the highest percentage move, then that's your starting point of you should assume that this is what you should do. Because in general, the computer just assumes that humans are right. But then it tries a variety of experimentation. It'll try, it'll pick a random move that it thinks a human would make, and then it will pick a move that it thinks a human would make from the other position, and just go back and forth, doing a probability distribution of how likely of a move it thinks it is. And then it plays the game all the way to the end, which takes like, a few milliseconds, and then it rates that and tries over and over and over again, and continues to have the games that it plays in its head inform its evaluation of the board. And each time its evaluation of the board changes, that helps inform which new games to play in the future. And it does this back and forth tens of thousands of times in a matter of seconds and decides what move to make.
Sounds like some pretty beastly calculations. So how much processing power is behind that?
AlphaGo actually uses thousands of CPUs. I'm not sure how much the processing power adds up to total, but it's a little over 2,000. Like it's very, very, very a lot of power. And actually, part of AlphaGo, their team's theory behind it, they eventually found that they could improve AlphaGo's ELO as a function of how much more processing power they give AlphaGo, and it starts scaling very dramatically. Like you have to increase the amount of processing power it takes to get the next 100 ELO points is much larger than the previous 100. So it actually scales up in kind of a funny way.
What does that mean for people who don't really know what CPUs are? What does that mean in terms of like space?
And just to clarify, ELO is a ranking of how well you play.
Yeah, so the processing power for this, think of it as like thousands of really strong computers and a couple big rooms full of just computers. So it's definitely the type of thing that it isn't super practical to just download to your laptop.
So you mean like one of those 1960s calculators that was, that would take up a giant room, right?
Yes, it's almost as powerful as your smartphone.
As far as the ELO rating and the number of CPUs, there's a nice little graph on the Wikipedia page for AlphaGo, which will be linked to in the episode description on the website.
We love Wikipedia.
It's great. Oh yeah, we defended Wikipedia a few weeks ago.
Wikipedia is great. They're actually largely dominated by 3 different AI systems that are continually scouring themselves looking for...
I had no clue.
Boom.
Actually, it's a self-learning algorithm, because what happens is when it tries to predict, somebody just vandalized something, and then the human says, you were right, or you were wrong, and the algorithm learns over time how to predict what is vandalism or not, and they've gotten extremely good.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Take that, Wikipedia critics.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to cover for groundwork, or should we dive into the games?
I guess the biggest thing that's important to know for this new match is that the match a couple months ago where AlphaGo, an earlier version of AlphaGo, played against a former European champion, that player he's very good, but he's...
Hold on. Let's give the thing a few seconds.
Your point. The match a couple months ago against the former European champion, he's a great player, but he's several ranks lower. He's a substantially less strong player than Lee Sedol.
His elo's lower?
Yeah, like, let's put it this way. If the two of them were to play, he would get several stones. He would get a handicap of several stones. He would get several moves in a row as just a advantage to try to make it more fair, because Go is an extremely skill testing game. So somebody who's a stronger player can overcome a great disadvantage in the game.
Someone told me that time is important in Go games, that the different moves are timed, that impacts your score. How does that work?
So the rules they were playing under, the Chinese rules, I guess, each person has 2 hours of clock time, and whenever it's their turn, their clock is going down. And when they run out of time, they now have 1 minute per move. And they also have 3 overtime periods. So they can go over 3 times. They get 3 bonus minutes. But then if you ever run out of time, you just lose.
Does that automatically benefit a computer player?
One might think. I mean, the computer never misses its move, and always takes takes however much time it has available, or that it thinks is a good idea to do, and it always makes the perfect amount based on what it thinks. But as we may find out, humans have a way of... there's a little bit of human ingenuity that not every computer is ready for. The match a couple months ago was 5-0 in favor of AlphaGo. And this was right on the heels of AlphaGo defeating the best Go computers in the world 499-1. And they actually ran it back. It was 500-0 the next time. But played against the European champion, defeated him 5-0. And people analyzing the game afterwards were impressed that a Go program could be this good. But they were not impressed compared to world-class players. And going into the match against Lee Sedol, many of the top Go players predicted that it would be a landslide. That it would be that there was at least a 95% chance that Lee Sedol would win. And when they asked Lee Sedol actually before the match his prediction, he said it would be a landslide. He would win 5-0, 4-1 at most.
Sounds like they need some more practice assigning probabilities to their beliefs.
How did Lee Sedol's predictions update after being crushed?
Apparently AlphaGo got a lot better in the meantime.
Yeah.
Practicing.
Google tried telling him that it got a lot better, but I think he had a sort of anchoring bias of how much could a human possibly improve in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And he did not take into consideration that it's not learning at the same rate as humans. Fortunately, is that interestingly, from what I saw, the Less Wrong community was substantially more accurate with regards to their predictions of how things would go. Now, they did not necessarily nail it exactly, but I think that their market was much better. As far as I know, what I saw, it was much closer to a 55-45 or 50-50, where there was a lot more benefit of the doubt given that Google would not be setting this up if AlphaGo wasn't ready.
Let's go into game 1, when everyone was still thinking that this was going to be an even fight.
Well, not everyone. The Less Wrong community, many of the humans thought it was going to be a landslide for the humans. Okay. Game 1, Lee Sedol used a slightly exploitive strategy. There's ways that you can play against computer programs in many games to get an advantage because of things that the computers are notoriously bad at understanding. And he took he made a couple moves, one move in particular early on that it was fine. It wasn't like it was a bad move. It was just not a move that you would normally make against another world-class player. But he wanted to just punish the AI because no computer programs could ever normally be good at this sort of thing. The end result was that they played a long, drawn-out game in which AlphaGo played extremely impressively throughout, and eventually that minor weakness early on ended up causing him to lose. Lee Sedol actually was defeated by AlphaGo, but the match itself was very deceptive with regards to AlphaGo's true capabilities, because even though it won by a tiny margin, and it made a number of plays near the end of the game that a number of people watching thought were evidence that AlphaGo isn't actually very good. It was making these weak plays. But in reality, AlphaGo doesn't care about the margin that it wins. And once it's actually seen a path, it will be content with whatever. It just wants to maximize its chances of winning, not its margin of victory.
So instead of going for one more point to increase the margin, it will get it down to as little as possible, if that'll give it just 0.01% greater chance of winning in the end.
That reminds me of that Star Trek episode that I saw a clip of, the old school Star Trek, where Spock and Kirk are playing chess, and Spock wins. Or excuse me, no, Kirk wins. And Spock's like, oh, I forgot to take into account that you would be irrational and stuff during the game. And it's like, it's not irrational if I won. And you know, so that's where it is with AlphaGo. You're right. Like, it doesn't care. It's like, I won. it doesn't matter how big of the margin
Spock.
it was. Yeah. We'll talk about Spock at length later. But I didn't watch any of the games. I'm planning on it maybe once I get some more background on. I've only played like 2 or 3 games of Go in my life, but I did read a lot of the commentary post per game, and everybody was saying, yeah, after game 1, like, oh yeah, Lee's got this next time, no problem.
Absolutely. The popular wisdom, I guess, was there's no question this program has improved a lot. You can't underestimate it. Lee Sedol's problem was that he underestimated it. He also didn't play his best game ever. He was just coming off of another match, and he didn't have the full amount of rest. And there was every bit of making excuses and every bit of, well, Lee's just going to tighten up his game. He's going to play a much more, he's going to take the things he's learned. And they actually asked Lee Sedol after the game, what is your prediction of the match now? Mm-hmm. And he said that AlphaGo it's incredible. He's very, very impressed. AlphaGo has improved a great deal. However, he will beat AlphaGo most likely. His hope is that he says that he thinks it'll be about, he said about 50-50 at this point, now that he's down a game. And they're playing best 3 out of 5 for $1 million. Yeah. And Lee Sedol is getting $150K just for playing, and then $20K for each win. And in game 2 rolls around. This time, the roles are switched. And to give an idea of in Go, whoever goes first, the way that they're playing, actually has to make up a 7.5 point handicap because of just how strong an advantage going first is. However, because of the 7.5 point handicap, going first is actually slightly worse. For like 7 points would be too much, 7.5 is too much the other way. Mm-hmm. So it ends up just being like a tiny edge for whoever is going second. But
in the second game, AlphaGo went first.
In the second game, AlphaGo is playing the slightly weaker position, and they play out their game. And in move 37,
just to be clear, the slightly weaker position being AlphaGo went first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the burden is on whoever goes first to generate action. Like, whoever goes first has to make up this disadvantage, and so there's a little bit of pressure on them to make things happen. Move 37, that is the moment that, I feel like the number 37 with regards to AI is going to be significant for years to come because of move 37 here, but Move 37 was the least human move, a move that was so inhuman that it shocked the Go community watching. It was the sort of move that 14-year-old Go players know not to make.
I heard that Lee got up and walked out of the room and spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out what the hell just happened.
Well, at first he was just in shock, and then he ended up running to the restroom. And I don't know, they said he was just washing his face and trying to get his composure, Like, it was just sort of I don't know what's going on. Nobody would ever make this move. And in fact, AlphaGo said that there is a less than 1 in 10,000 chance that a human would make the move, which it takes an enormous amount of evidence to make AlphaGo want to overcome that bias. However, it was very confident that it had a better move and that humans would not make it normally, but it thought it was better. And part of the way that AlphaGo evaluates these things is that it does Markov simulations over and over and over again, where it'll play out the game with many, many different possibilities and then average them together over time to try to get an understanding of the position. It, in this case, found a path that it was confident was better than what humans would do, and it knew that they knew just looking at the readout, they're going to be, and you could actually see the guy, one of the Google people who was there making the moves, who's a very strong Go player in his own right, the wry smile on his face when he made the move. And actually the commentators watching were just like sure that this was a mistake, like in some way where they were just like, what?
I remember since none of us had this information at the time, I was like on a 15-20 minute delay, but when I heard about it, that's when I first texted you. And I was like, so is this a glitch in AlphaGo? Did it just bug out on us? Like, no one knew. They couldn't say at the time.
And over the course of the next, for the next hour or so, people were convinced, well, this is evidence that AlphaGo's not actually that good. See, Lee Sedol's going to win for sure. And then over time, it was like, well, based on our sort of heuristics, our sort of evaluations of the board, it seems like Lee Sedol's winning, but it's really confusing. And then it started seeming like he was winning by smaller amounts. And eventually they're just, they're asking the guy to kind of score, like, what does it look like the score is? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess Lee Sedol's up by, conventionally you'd say Lee Sedol's up by like 20, but like there's this, there's a bunch of different areas that are very confusing and unresolved. And so depending on how they turn out, and it's just very strange. I think at one point he actually mentioned, if AlphaGo actually wins this, it is over it's like, there's no way that this can be, like, if this is Go strategy, then I don't even know Go strategy.
I remember a less wrong commenter saying that this may be evidence, after the win happened, this may be evidence that humans just can't play against machines. It's not the same level of thinking.
Yeah, like, this is the one where it's like, if this is actually a winning line, then I don't know that there are any good human Go players. Like, it's like, so long time later, eventually it becomes clear AlphaGo is going to grind out a small advantage, and he even made some slack moves, some moves that seemed weak, like in that earlier game, that were actually just evidence. At one point it was like, see, maybe this means that AlphaGo is just off its rocker. And the other guy's like, no, actually that's evidence that AlphaGo has already won. And the end result was Lee being defeated by this very strange position, and with a move that no human has ever made. I mean, nobody could see that. I mean, it was just so bizarre. It's actually very, very strategically sound. It's just so, like, the humans making new moves will often build on variations of patterns in previous games and try minor experimentation. This was so different of a way than humans would normally play that it is very unlikely that a human would just try going down this path, because it's so unusual, so unlike any previous patterns. And after game 2, they asked Lee Sedol, what is your prediction of the match now? And he said, it is my greatest hope to win a game.
Can we fast forward to game 4?
Absolutely.
Well, does Game 3 have anything? Does Game 3 have anything? I was really eager to hear about Game 4 too, but I want to. Was Game 3 have a lot of highlights?
Let's do Game 3 too.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So Game 3, and I'll make it more brief. I apologize for rambling on.
No.
AlphaGo is a hero of mine.
I am intensely interested.
Game 3, Lee Sedol actually just played a very, very, like, to his strengths, and played a very, I'm not going to try anything crazy. I'm going to play a good, disciplined game. And he tried steering AlphaGo in a direction that was the sort of going towards the very, very nebulous situations where it's just too hard to calculate what the end result is. How does AlphaGo do in a situation where AlphaGo has no chance of being able to brute force? And AlphaGo just played a remarkable game that was, it just seemed like, despite the fact that Lee Sedol played a nearly flawless game, like just an absolutely incredible level game, he still lost. And it was like, afterwards they were like, so what did he do different? What should he have done different? Where was his blunder? And they're like, I don't even know that there's anything I'd point to that it's like I would do different in the future, but it just ended up in a bad spot. Like, how can you know? And it was just, and Lee Sedol was devastated, but it was clear that, the computer could, in fact, play from situations that require sort of an intuitive estimate of what it would look like. And then we go to game 4.
So at that point, after game 3, the computer had won. AlphaGo had won, because it was a best 3 out of 5 situation. And that meant that how much prize money went to Google?
Actually, Google donated the money either way, but they donated the $1 million to charity.
Just $1 million.
Yeah, actually $1,040,000 or something.
Okay.
It's also $20K per game.
Okay.
And then the last 2 games are just for $20K, but Lee Sedol is playing for pride. I mean, this is just blowing his mind. And he actually counseled with his teammates and friends, who are some of the best Go players in the world, to try to devise a strategy. They had a little bit of rest, and they were trying to come up with, how can they possibly do this? Like, how can they possibly try to take a game off of AlphaGo? And he actually, game 4 was truly brilliant. He radically changed his strategy. He actually did something that a world-class Go player often would not want to do, which is make the game very all or nothing. one of the things they realized is that you can't just grind out little advantages against AlphaGo. You eventually lose. And they tried to make it instead, let's just make it all or nothing, where there's going to be one big battle and whoever wins that will just win decisively the match instead of having it be up in the air, which is a risky approach, but one that they thought might be given better chances. They also realized that AlphaGo takes the same amount of time, no matter how much time Lee Sedol uses. Actually, after he had already lost Game 3, he stayed playing for hours just with no clock, but just studying, or like trying to learn more about AlphaGo. And they theorized, I bet if you just use all your time early on, AlphaGo will not speed up. It'll still take 2.5 minutes per move or whatever, and you can think during AlphaGo's turn. And so Lee Sedol actually used all of his clock, his 2 hour, he used it all up, including 35 minutes, his last 35 minutes, in the 3 moves prior to his master stroke in Game 4, where he wanted to be sure that he had thought about as much as possible on his clock, and then he knew that after he pulled off this big trap that he had been setting, AlphaGo was going to have to reevaluate its whole understanding of the game, and he didn't want it to be doing that. He wanted to use as much time to think beforehand, and then think on AlphaGo's time. He set a trap that involved several pieces of the trap being many moves apart so that AlphaGo would not anticipate them near each other, and he he studied some actually about how Markov simulations work, and they studied a little bit on how to try to find weaknesses in the thought process of a computer that uses Markov simulations. And one of the things they realized is that if a move is near lots of really, really bad moves, if it's a long convoluted chain that is surrounded by lots of really bad things, it's possible that early on, if the first 1,000 times it starts looking down this branch, it looks really bad, it stops looking down the branch very hard. And so if you make a long convoluted chain that involves lots of really bad decisions in the way, it can sometimes miss it. And he made a move that one of the best Go players in the world described as the hand of God, making a move 78. And it was, it's obviously somewhat hyperbolic, but it was actually, from AlphaGo's estimate, less than 1 in 10,000 chance that a human would make that move as well. It was actually it was the most surprising thing that Lee Sedol did in the match, and it was a move that was off its scale. It was where it could not imagine that a human would do this. And as soon as he did it, the people watching were just like, that's brilliant. They didn't know how it was going to end or where it was going to go, but they could tell you would not do this unless you were setting up this big plan. And it looked like it might not, it's actually the next 10 moves after, it looked like AlphaGo is making blunders. What's going on? Why is AlphaGo making these slack moves? And they realized AlphaGo thinks it's winning by a lot. It's playing so conservative, it thinks it's winning. And then 10 moves later, suddenly AlphaGo's percentage chance of winning the game, according to itself, plummeted rapidly. And they're like, what happened? Why? How could it possibly have dropped that much that fast? It went from 70-something% to 28% or whatever. What happened? And AlphaGo said 10 moves ago that it blundered. It just didn't realize it. It didn't understand the position 10 moves ago. And it was too late now. And then it started playing desperate, where it started doing crazy things to try to, the type of move that, if it works out, it would be a huge win, but it's never really going to work out. It's just too easy to see. Partly because it thought it was losing by so much that it started getting very, very desperate for what moves to make, but it also didn't take into consideration Lee Sedol has no time on his clock. If the computer would have just been playing quickly, it very likely would have beat him actually very easily, because it was a very complicated game that went on for over 2 hours with Lee Sedol having no clock, where he was having to play. And it was an incredible test of his constitution, but also the computer just not understanding that it shouldn't take the full amount of time every turn to think about its moves.
Okay, so can the developers fix that and what caused the blunder in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely could. It never even occurred to them to have AlphaGo change how much time that it takes based on the other person's clock. AlphaGo, one of its flaws is that it always thinks that humans are making decisions at peak human level. It doesn't evaluate, you've been making some mistakes recently, or you're in an emotional state where you might be compromised, or you don't have any time on your clock. It actually just assumes that humans behave sort of like a machine.
So on the chain of bad moves and the kind of traps that it laid, that Lee Sedol laid for AlphaGo, is that the kind of trick that a human Go player of Lee Sedol's level would have fallen for?
Well, what Lee Sedol did was a play that was brilliant at any level. I mean, it would be very, very difficult for a world-class player, if once they're in that position, to defend against. But the problem was that the AlphaGo actually started making crazy, risky moves against Lee Sedol, and no world-class player would fall for the things that AlphaGo was trying. AlphaGo just thought it's so desperate. Some humans sometimes fall for this. And so it's like, even though this is a small percentage chance, it has seen that some humans would fall for this, but not Lee Sedol.
Gotcha.
Wow.
But part of that was just that at first it thought that it's winning by so much that it can be just giving away edge because it's just playing conservatively, where it just wants to, it'd be willing to give up 10 points because it's like, oh, this gives me a 2% chance better of winning, but it just didn't understand the board position. And then later it thought, I'm losing by so much, I need to do crazy things to try to win. So AlphaGo is very much less good when it thinks it's winning by a lot or by a little and is wrong.
That's real. I just want to quickly say, listening to you tell this story, it's hard not to throw my hopes behind Lee Sedol. And, this is such a John Henry driving railroad ties story. Are they called railroad ties?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you just really want him to win against that steam-powered tie driver. So Lee won that fourth game.
Can I go back to your question? When she asked that, if the human programmers could program around that.
They're not going to change it in the middle of the match either.
No, obviously not in the middle of the match. But no, doesn't that feel like cheating? Like, isn't it something that you would want to make an AI that can recognize that and fix it on its own rather than humans having to come in and patch it?
Long term.
Okay.
But, this is just one more step along the way towards
my real question isn't, can we patch the problem? The real question is, can we make an AI that can self-modify so that it sees this problem and fixes it?
Yeah, it's not so much that we would patch the problem, because that's not how it operates. It's more of we would give it another axis that it can explore for determining how to fix itself. Because right now, it doesn't even have the ability to change that part of itself. But absolutely, it needs to be able to do it. It's so unlikely that a human could just predict the right amount, the right patch, so to speak. It's just much better to let the neural network build its own patch. The fourth game, though, was crazy because for like an hour and a half, it's like, okay, Lee Sedol is definitely winning. He has this game locked up and the computer is doing crazy, ridiculous, awful things. Lee Sedol has to have the game won. And the other guy's like, you saw what happened before. We thought it was crazy. This has to just be some genius masterstroke. He's like, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way. He would never. This is just horrible. And then at the very end, eventually AlphaGo resigns. If AlphaGo's probability of winning drops to a low level, it resigns because it just starts playing more and more embarrassingly. And they're just like, let's just get it over with. But
it's below 20%, I read?
Yes, but it's also kind of a weird 20% because it's 20% among humans, and it starts to spiral out of control because, as we've seen, when AlphaGo thinks it's losing, it starts becoming more and more desperate because its only goal is to maximize winning, not avoiding looking foolish. And so after Game 4, the fact that he actually won, he's already a national hero in South Korea anyway, but this is like this great redeeming moment. And actually he had in Game 5, he could have had the privilege of the slightly better position, but he actually requested to play black because he had already won. The one he won with white. And he wanted to, he actually asked Google if it would be all right if he played from the black side, because, basically just as a sort of pride, like I want to try a chance. Partly, AlphaGo is better from the white side. They realized.
Is that a start side? Which side is the start side?
So black goes first.
Got it. So it's at a slight disadvantage.
Yeah, it has to make up a 7.5 point handicap. And it is at a slight disadvantage, but also AlphaGo exacerbates this. Like, AlphaGo is very good at defending. And so they played the fifth game, and the most remarkable thing about the fifth game, because there was a question watching it, is Lee Sedol just going to demonstrate the loop? Like, is he just unbeatable now? Is he just going to beat the computer? Or was he lucky? And Lee Sedol immediately adopted a very, very aggressive attacking position and took lots of territory all over, because after analyzing the fourth game, he realized AlphaGo has a weakness in understanding when you take lots and lots of territory all over the board, it loses track of, like, it doesn't have a great understanding. It doesn't have as good of an understanding and this is not the kind of game that Lee Sedol would want to play normally, but he can play any style. And in the early game, it seemed as though he was just routing AlphaGo. They were actually wondering if AlphaGo was going to resign, because it looked like Lee Sedol was winning by so much. Now, AlphaGo actually did not believe that it was losing by as much as the humans watching believed that it was, but it thought that it was losing pretty clearly. And but it's one of those, Lee Sedol's plan worked marvelously. He gave himself a 60-40 edge. And in the end, AlphaGo got its 40% and got there. Because even if you pull off a 60-40 edge, it doesn't mean you've won. It means you are 60% to win. So in the end, 4-1 in favor of AlphaGo. And that one may be the only one ever that AlphaGo loses, because I got a feeling that when it plays against Gu Li in the best Chinese player in the future, which I assume will be the next match they set up, I do not think AlphaGo is taking any losses.
So there's a lot to process. I'm trying to to get to the next way to look at this. So is Google going to go and do any revamping whatsoever, or any so when is the
they don't have it scheduled or announced yet.
Okay, so they've got some time to make sure that's not vulnerable to the same maneuvers that Lee Sedol was utilizing.
It's not so much that they're making sure that it's not vulnerable. It's more of they've learned lots of new places to let the neural network be able to explore and try new things. And additionally, it's going to be thinking about the game more. AlphaGo gets better all of the time. Like, it thinks about the game a lot. And part of that involves playing millions and millions. I mean, it's only played about one human lifetime worth of games against opponents, but it plays against itself in its head a lot.
It has literally nothing else to do.
It has very, very little else. Once in a while, it'll do an exhibition against the world champ, but it mostly just thinks about Go.
Why are we having AI systems play games? Why is that really important to be happening now?
So AlphaGo is a general learning algorithm. It wasn't designed to play Go. It was just designed to learn and think. And that's part of what's so fascinating about it, is that, like, for instance, some of the previous games that AlphaGo learned how to play Pong. The DeepMind learned how to play Pong, and it's just the best Pong player in the world, which is kind of bizarre to watch it play because it doesn't play like a human would. They had it look at every YouTube video on the internet and identify which ones have cats, which ones have humans, and what are all the cats and what are all the humans. And it's kind of crazy the amount that this same system is learning how to think about things. Like, it's figuring out how to make relationships between things. It's a very intuitive program. It's properly described as intuitive, and some have described it as empathetic. It's continually trying to understand the worldview of the other actor. Like, what are their values? What are they going to do? What are they? And the hope is that this can be used in any number, in basically every other area. Everything from, like, optimizing streetlights to where to investigate for medical advances, to where to drill for oil, to how to efficiently move resources around, to where to build a new power plant. Basically just things that people think about. The hope is that systems like this will be able to think about them better than a human would be able to, and accomplish these tasks better. You know, like, it would be great if, like, if AlphaGo is better at Go than any human in the world, that's great for winning at Go. But imagine if we had something that was that much better than any human in the world at figuring out what combinations of chemicals to put together in order to cure some disease, or how to lay out a city so that there would be less traffic, or anything like that.
Or how to do accounting really well.
Absolutely.
So why
Your
is it
job's in
playing?
danger.
That was going to be my next question. How much longer till we're all unemployed?
Unemployed is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, sometimes when you don't have to carry the heavy load yourself, you're a little bit more free. Is it that you're unemployed if they don't need you to drag the plow across the field, that the robot does it for you, and then you get to spend your time recording podcasts?
Why are we so concerned about this computer playing Go when we could be more concerned about it taking Eneash's job and doing accounting, which would be significantly more useful? Sorry, Eneash.
No, it's true.
I wouldn't be. See, I don't know. It depends. I think different people are concerned about different things. I would guess he's more concerned about his job being taken, but I think that the big thing is this AI is a big step forward for. I think super AI is the real the real thing on the horizon. But there's also just some of the AI systems. Like recently, it was revealed that there's an AI system called Skynet. Mm-hmm. That evaluates people and determines things like who the drones should go after. So it's really important to know the state of affairs of where AI is and what we can do to improve it, because one way or the other, AIs are continuing to get built and will be stronger and stronger in the future.
Would it be fair to say that we're not at a place quite yet? We're at a place where Go can be beaten, human Go players can be beaten by AI, but human accountants cannot be replaced by AI yet?
Oh, yeah.
That we don't have that technology, that Go is kind of at a different level?
If we did, I wouldn't have a job right now.
Not necessarily.
A big important thing here is the difference between perfect information games and hidden information games. Accounting, funny enough, is sort of a hidden information game. And Go is sort of the final frontier of perfect information, where it's just like, okay, this is clearly computers are just better than humans at games where all the information is known, where there are concrete sets of moves. You can tell when the game is over. When things involve hidden information and undefined victory conditions and endpoints, there's a lot of rich area to explore in that area. And AIs will continue to replace humans in different areas. It's hard to predict which ones are going to get replaced first, and I don't think that there's any reason to believe that accounting is next on the chopping block.
So the trillion-dollar question is, how long until DeepMind or a similar AI program is better than any human at designing AIs?
Well, in some ways, it already is. DeepMind, the neural network is already incomprehensible to humans. Why is AlphaGo making the decisions? How is AlphaGo doing the things that it's doing? It's not clear. It's tried lots and lots of combinations. And there's this sort of, it's almost like a tower function that maybe humans are higher up on the chain, where the humans are still the ones who can unplug it, and the humans are still the ones directing it. And maybe it's not too far in the future for when AIs will be better at directing it than humans. Because already we have AIs are much better than humans at making a specific type of AI. If the AI, you need to come up with some artificial intelligence for a particular thing, and AI is much better at figuring out how to do that thing in general, at least for perfect information systems. Now, when it comes to just making AIs in general, I think that when a computer is better and has the direction, at that point there isn't that much game after that. All of the games before that, because at that point the die has kind of been cast.
You mentioned when we spoke about this a couple weeks ago that your estimate for the timeline of this dropped radically in the last couple of weeks.
This is the first time that I guess if you could call it I think that the most likely scenario is that the AI will be in charge. The AI there will be a super AI, and it will functionally be God. And
sovereign.
Yes.
Do a little callback.
We did some homework to look up some of the technical definitions that Eliezer brought up in our last, or I guess in episode 3.
And before you thought this wouldn't ever be a thing that could happen, or
No. I thought it would be, but it's more of instead of by the end of 2040, the 2040s, maybe a little closer to the beginning, or possibly even the late 2030s. I don't know. This is such a unexpected jump forward, and the system that they've described is so widely applicable. Like the two different styles of combining the neural network, combining deep learning with the look ahead ability that it has. I think that this is really decreases my confidence that I can even meaningfully be able to predict when certain things are going to be unfolding, because it's going to happen very, very radically and likely by surprise.
I have a question for all of you.
Okay.
Are you frightened?
I've always been frightened. This moves my frightedness up a little bit, but I guess that means I'm a little more frightened, since then we have less time to figure out the friendly AI problem. I remember you were very pessimistic when we talked a few weeks ago. You were kind of pessimistic.
See, I don't know if pessimistic is what I would say. I would say...
You thought that we did not have enough time left now to do it.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. No. I'm saying that there isn't I would say, if you're describing... pessimistic is a funny word, because I wouldn't even describe myself as frightened. I don't think there's a ton of utility in the fear.
Okay.
I would say perhaps motivated. I think that it is unlikely that one could stop there from being AI, from being a super AI eventually. I think that most likely the best way, if that's your only goal, the best way would be annihilation. But I think realistically there's going to be super AI. I don't know. I kind of take the position though of just play to your outs. We have an opportunity right now to help shape things as best as possible. I also think that some of the factors that go into whatever that world is are so incomprehensible to us right now. I don't overly worry about it, because it's very easy to imagine how scary the world might be, but I can't possibly evaluate the decisions that are being made in that world. It's like looking in, an ant can't evaluate the position, the decisions being made by humans in a meaningful way. And instead, I think that you kind of just, when you're the ant, you evaluate, are you going to take this little kernel of corn back to the colony?
As people, though, we have the opportunity to affect policy. We have the opportunity to sway the decisions that corporations make. And if more people maybe have their nervousness meter up a little bit more, that could pave the way for more research into friendly AI pre-super AI.
I wanted to say from your initial question that my anxiety level and my eagerness level both go up. Because there's a lot of ways that it could go wrong. Even
Most of them.
Exactly. there are way more ways that could go bad than it can go right. So my thinking is that I guess I personally don't like being left out of the loop, even though that kind of has to happen of even a good future. It's not going to consult me first.
See, actually, that's one of the areas that I think that it is, we don't know enough to be so sure. I mean, how do you know that you're not going to be able to have an increased level of awareness, an understanding, for instance, being augmented by AI, or having all of think about how much knowledge you have access to now that you could not possibly have had access to 15, 20 years ago. Not only, growing up and having all the experiences you've had, but also the technology, the fact that you have a smartphone and can just get 99% of the world's knowledge at will.
It is fun to reflect on that. Anywhere that I have cell phone reception, I have access to more information than the President of the United States did 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right?
More than existed.
Yeah.
I mean, So I think that if you just look at just how much power, how much knowledge, how much awareness and understanding you have at your disposal now, there is no reason to think that there can't be futures in which you continue to increase your awareness and understanding. And even if you don't, at a certain point, there's also your children carry on. Like,
This is the philosophical thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I saw Hugh Howley, who wrote the Wool series, was recently posting about how right now we are watching our baby AI grow.
Yes.
And every time she does something like beat a chess grandmaster or a Go grandmaster, it's like, oh, look, she took another first step. This is so amazing.
Why is it a baby girl? I saw the headline.
Because-
the buzzwords headline, and
I'm assuming because he thinks baby girls are cuter.
Sorry, women, it's a baby boy from now on, just to be
Yeah.
clear.
how about just a baby? Why does AI have to be gendered?
Because ships are girls.
I think
Whoa.
So I
We
think-
can talk about that another time.
Isn't that the thing? Aren't vessels
Ships
named
are
after?
traditionally girls.
Oh, good. Having never
Or female, I guess.
right, having never been on a proper
That's an
sea vessel.
example of something sexist.
See, I actually think that part of the reason why they default that way is the wanting to help bias away from, like, there's been a historical bias where a lot of males will design systems or tech and just talk about it in very masculine language that is not as inclusive as would be useful.
Or like ships, a lot of times they talk about it with female pronouns and as female entities.
Ah, yes, like the race, for instance, describing their baby, this is the thing I made, and speaking almost diminutively, right? I mean,
Right. I think he was trying to make it really cute, and so, you call it a baby, humans are used to babies being gendered, so he was going to have to pick a pronoun.
I don't want to derail this. I really don't. I don't want to derail this conversation to be about gendering things and things being biased in favor of gendering versus not. So let's move on.
That aside,
So I wanted to ask about the whole children thing, because there's a lot of thought along the lines of, well, this is the next thing we make. This is the next step of life on Earth. And so these are like our children. But I personally do not really want to die ever. And so I don't want to become irrelevant either.
so are you okay with changing?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with changing. But isn't there a theoretical limit to how much a human can change before they're not human anymore?
I mean, are humans today humans the same way that cave people were?
No, not even a little bit.
Is it okay, like, even though the cave people might be really attached to the way that they were,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to imagine that it's better, or humans now are better than the way that cave people were 100,000 years ago.
It is. It's really weird too. Just recently, I read an article about this tribe that doesn't have counting. Like one of the few in the world that still doesn't have counting. And you read about their way of life, and it's so bizarre. I literally felt like I was reading about a different species. I was like, I cannot empathize with these people as humans anymore. I empathize more with my pet dog, because it was the most bizarre thing. And yeah, no, we are significantly different. And are we losing something? Can we even become a different thing and keep ourselves? Yes? Stephen?
Well, I just wanted to give a quick 2-cent answer on that. That I'm thinking, if I were a caveman from 140,000 years ago, and I could have it sufficiently explained, I probably couldn't have it sufficiently explained to me what it would be like to be a person in the 21st century. But now, if as that person, I could grow up and to be that person for the 21st century, I would look back and say, I'm so glad. And now it's easy, having taken that perspective, I can imagine in some future looking back and saying, I'm sure glad I changed.
Yeah, but I think that may just be accident of birth. Like, the caveman would be like, these people never go chase after game and throw spear. Instead, they sit in front of Glowbox and manipulate pixels on a screen. Where is the glory in manipulating pixels on a screen when you can murder a mammoth, you know?
But now I can shoot fireballs from my hands in Skyrim, so,
Pixel fireballs! They're not a wooden spear!
Right, but in the future, it's like, you were so content to throw pixels on a screen. Mm-hmm. In the future, you can literally just rearrange atoms in a solar system to build things and do things like work on problems that actually matter. like heat death of the universe.
Yeah, but can we? Or is that something so beyond humans that only something so alien that you don't even recognize it as human anymore can do?
See, I guess it ends up just being, what is the important thing? Like,
who cares?
Yeah, like,
who cares? We're all different one day to the next.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very important that humans continue and I think that, well, that might be overstating it. I mean, in the very long term.
Yeah.
I think that's natural. If your argument is, we're going to be losing something.
No.
We always lose something through the history of the universe. There's always been change.
I agree
right?
with you entirely. If I could change
natural.
into that. No, if I could change into that, I'm totally okay with changing into that. I'm just worried there may be some level where my neurology cannot change anymore.
So who do you think's in a better position to evaluate this?
Well, assuming future AIs than me, yeah, but it's theoretically possible that I cannot be modified that much, right?
Yeah, it's theoretically possible that you spontaneously combust.
Oh,
who cares?
Fine, okay.
Right? Like, I mean,
we care because we know you and like you.
Yeah.
But
no, I meant like who cares as in who cares about that tiny probability?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm talking like...
Do you really think it's a tiny probability, though?
I'm saying that it's not, like, if you spontaneously combust...
No, that's like, obviously tiny
no,
probability.
my point is that if you spontaneously combust, it's not like you're like, well, I shouldn't have let some of these atoms move in this place. No, there's nothing you could have done about it.
But there's no way a human could think up move 37.
That's not true. In Game 4, he thought of move 78. Move 78 was as inhuman and as improbable as move 37.
Way to bring it back.
That's what makes it so brilliant. That's what makes it so brilliant.
So I, for one, as a human, am very proud and excited about AI babies. and I'm happy to, hopefully they're going to grow up to be good and kind and wonderful. And I'm happy that they'll be taking over the world. But
as long as we program them to be good and kind and wonderful.
I really come around to this whole don't be evil thing.
Right.
That's a great, like, when you...
Yeah, first you got to define evil for the machine, though.
Go ahead and define itself.
I'm worried about that.
And as you should be. I totally agree with you, Eneasz. So to bring things kind of back to rationality.
It's a good place to go back to.
So we are all members of Denver Area Less Wrong, and we are broadcasting from Denver, Colorado, just some back information. And we're very concerned with rationality. What is the connection between rationality and what Eneasz and Stephen, you and I have been talking about on this podcast for the past few episodes, and AI?
AIs are, if I can give a quick soundbite, the ultimate rational agents. So where humans can be aspiring rational agents, we are still built with all of this weird ape programming that worked great for hunter-gatherers on the savannah, but doesn't work great for optimizing decision-making. And AIs you can build from the ground up and not include all that baggage.
I think the main connection is that if we're going to eventually make some sort of superhuman thinking device, which will more or less become a god, we want to design it so that it thinks well and so that it values the same things we do, and that rationality were the first tools to try to explore, well, not the first tools, but they were a major step forward in trying to explore what makes thinking, how to codify thinking in a way that it can be programmed into a machine. Not just, intuitive thinking, but actually breaking thinking down into math and probability distributions and how to make a machine learn it.
That's a good explanation.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually part of the brilliance of AlphaGo's system of thinking. It isn't just that it has a neural network that can evaluate these positions. It thinks about, like, it has an idea, you could say, based on, just let's roll some dice based on what we think humans would do, play it all the way to the end, and see how that idea turned out, and continue to change its values as it thinks about the problem, change its values and steer what sort of ideas it has based on what sort of positions is it getting to, and are we getting warmer or cooler? And in many ways, it's like when a human thinks about a problem, and can feel like they're making progress, like moving closer to the answer, even when they don't have. It's not like a partial credit thing. It's like this is the right place to be thinking about. This is the right axis to be thinking about.
You know what surprised me is all of this neural network and kind of not natural, but artificial selection way of developing the artificial intelligence AlphaGo. I was kind of surprised that we used things that are already in place. Evolution, brains, human brains.
One of my favorite, adventures with computing involving evolution was a microchip that is like a genetic algorithm. It improves itself over time for solving particular types of problems. And the people who were working on the chip as an experiment, they were trying a variety of ways to effectively stress test the microchip, and they gave it a problem that the human quote-unquote solution involved thousands of logic gates, and they only gave it 100 just to see what would happen if it were under these extreme conditions. And it was effectively when a sound is played, if the computer powers up, that's a success, and if a different sound of a different frequency is played and the computer powers down, that's a success. And then they just seeded it with 50 random combinations to see, and then let it evolve over time, where it would take different, some of the combinations, some of the seeds, and reproduce depending on the success, and continue to evolve, and the microchip would just evolve itself. And over time, I mean, it took a while before the microchip was even like responding to stimulus reliably. There was a lot of noise for a while, but eventually they get to a spot where the microchip is actually producing the correct answer more than 50% of the time up and more than 50% down. And they let it play more, and hundreds of generations, hundreds and hundreds of generations go by, and eventually it's actually pretty consistently getting the right answer. And eventually, after some number of thousands, it stopped meaningfully evolving at all. And they were just like, okay, well, let's take a look. It's done cooking. I can't believe it actually solved the problem. And they look under the hood, and it's at that point the guy leading the experiment was about ready to punch the other person working on the experiment for trolling him, for like, why would you pull a prank like this on me? This is not funny. And he assured him there was no prank, and the security cameras, in fact, affirmed there was nobody tampered with it. And he's like, this doesn't make sense. He looked down. First of all, it was only using 37 of the 100 logic gates. This doesn't even make sense. Second of all, 32 of them are in one corner where the power is. The other 5 are just in a circle in the opposite corner, not even plugged in. What in the world is going on? And the 32 over here involves 2 little loops in opposite directions of current and a few logic systems, but it's like, this is baffling. Nobody would ever make a microchip like this. This is nonsensical. And they looked, and sure enough, it continued to work. And he tries this as an experiment. He's like, okay, well, first of all, let's take these 5 out, because it must have just grown some vestige that wasn't necessary and instantly it didn't work. And they're like, how in the world? It's not even plugged in. So he puts it back and he tries sliding it over a little. It doesn't work. He's like, what in the world? And so they were like, okay, well, clearly we're going to have to revise what it is we're looking for here. It can't be anything that's possible. So we're going to need to start coming up with ideas that are impossible to try to describe this, and apparently the theory they eventually they came to is that when you have the power on, there is a magnetic current. The electricity going opposite ways creates a magnetic field. And when the sound plays, it vibrates the circle in the opposite corner, almost like a tuning fork or, I don't know, a human ear. And it actually distorts the magnetic field in a way that causes what few logic gates are actually plugged in and doing anything logic gatey to power up or power down the computer in response to that change in the magnetic field. And this is a radical departure from how microchips are made by humans.
I remember reading that same thing, and that was the reason you couldn't.
Effective.
Yeah, you couldn't move it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was like literally optimized to that exact position relative to the computer on planet Earth. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. One of the things I wanted to ask, which I think you sufficiently answered.
Maybe we can expound on it for much, much longer.
To anybody who listened to the whole episode, I'm glad I didn't ask this at the beginning. So I think an uninformed outsider could be like, so what? Deep Blue beat Bobby Fischer at chess 20 years ago. Who cares? So why is this a bigger deal? But I think that's been sufficiently covered. But if someone asked you that question and you were in an elevator, what would you say in 30 seconds?
You have 30 seconds to tell them why Go is different than chess.
20 years ago, the best chess player of all time, or at least one of the best, Garry Kasparov, was defeated by Deep Blue, but it was a system in which humans taught the computer the strategy. The humans came up with the AI, they gave it the formula, and it just relied on brute force and an enormous series of tools given to it by humans. AlphaGo made its own strategy. AlphaGo, while it has an enormous amount of processing power, is playing a game that cannot be solved by brute force, and there's just not enough big enough universe. And it made its own strategy. It taught itself, and that's part of what makes it so revolutionary.
Awesome.
I wanted, actually, before we go any further, is there anything you want to plug or promote at this point?
Oh, God.
That you didn't already promote at the beginning.
If not, we'll put it on if you can't think of anything, we'll put it on the website later.
I mean, down for whatever. It depends. I guess you said a lot of people play Magic. I'm author of Next Level Magic and a series of books on Magic. Write articles for Star City Games. And I got a music album coming out later this year. Kind of excited about that. Another music album. But
What's it called?
I can't. It hasn't come out yet.
Oh.
It's, yeah. But The Gathering is on YouTube. Some of the stuff I did with Bill Bowden. But anyway, it's been a true pleasure.
Patrick, remind everybody of your full name so that they can look you up. And of course, we'll have this on the website as well.
Patrick Chapin.
All right. And again, we'll have this on the website, thebayesianconspiracy.com. So visit us there.
Or you can go to the subreddit /r the Bayesian Conspiracy.
Those are the two resources. That and the description in the iTunes download. You can click those links.
And we do have a correction from the subreddit. Last episode, or was it 2 episodes ago now? We mentioned that Robert Aumann was the Nobel Prize winner, deeply religious.
Yeah.
And there was a brief conjecture that he might be Jehovah's Witness. And no, he's actually Orthodox Jewish.
And I knew that after we stopped recording. I remembered that it wasn't. I think we knew it was never Jehovah's Witness. We just knew he was fundamentalist somehow.
Yeah.
But Robert Aumann was an Orthodox Jew and an old school. Well, no, it must be a modern Orthodox. I'm assuming.
We do not want to speculate on that right now. If you have any corrections or any comments, please talk about it on the subreddit or on the website. Thank you for joining our conversation. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.